the associations, the stakeholders, the sponsors, the religious sponsors, all of us are working for the children of Kenya. So if the interest is that of the children, we should be able to get a solution to whatever problem that we face if we discuss it openly. With respect to disadvantaged areas where we need to ensure that the children have their particular classes, it is a problem that needs to be solved. And one of the ways this can be done is by partnering with other organizations. For instance, you would work with organizations to build affordable classes from which then we could lease and pay them in installments. So we could look at the situation the way it is and come up with affirmative action to ensure that those classes are there, because those children will be disadvantaged if we don't organize for them to have the classes to be able to study. Honorable Owen, the question on the children not being captured in NEMIS. It is true. The NEMIS tool is based on the birth certificates. And where there is no birth certificate, the children are not captured. If they are not captured, then they don't get the capitation. So it is straight away a discrimination on those children, because the Constitution under Article 53 does not say the children that are supposed to be funded have to have a birth certificate. It just says the children of Kenya must get their education. So what has happened after that, I think problem was raised with the ministry. A group or a team was formed, and they have undertaken a physical census, a 50-day physical census of the children in the country, and that exercise is ending tomorrow. Once that is done, those children will be fed into the system. In the meantime, the NEMIS is not comprehensive enough. So there's a proposal to come up with a larger ICT program, which we are calling KEMIS, the Kenya Education National Management Information System, whereby it will capture not only the children from birth or from entering school, but it will capture everything else. There'll be what do you call them? You call them modules inside there that capture everything relating to the student, so that you are given a number when you enter school, and you stay with this number until you get employed. So that if you go to a particular school, it will show you've gone to this school. If you graduate, it will show you graduated with this degree. So until the time you get employed, then you can change the numbers at that point. This also helps us resolve the issue of certificates or fake certificates as are known in this country. So that problem is being addressed, and it's a genuine problem, and I believe it is something that if I became CS, I would follow personally to ensure it is done.
Yes, as Honorable Mbui comes on, nominee, would you consider when dealing with Owen Byers' issue, would it be prudent for you to engage the registrar of births and deaths to go around schools and issue certificates, birth certificates to children, especially in disadvantaged areas?
That is correct, Mr. Speaker, because once this exercise ends tomorrow and we have the report showing which schools or which students do not have birth certificates, then we can engage them to go and issue those birth certificates. It's a possibility.
Robert Mbui.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Dr. Migos, you know, the issue of capitation is normally very low, based on the amounts that are given and constantly delayed. How do you feel that you deal with this issue? Then there's also the reference all the time to free primary education, free secondary education, yet we are aware that parents have to pay for teachers that are paid for by parents under BOM, and also we have constant, every time we have exams, the parents have to pay for them, co-curricular activities, parents have to pay for them, so the uniforms, parents have to pay. So will you consider dropping this misleading term of free education from Kenyan education sector, or will you make it really free. And finally, the Basic Education Act is very clear that no child should be sent away from school for whatever reason. But this is constantly happening, because if you go to all our rural areas, you find children walking back home during the day for, small amounts of money, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 shillings, 100 shillings. What will you do to deal with this menace?
Thank you, Speaker. Mine is nominee. How will you propose to enhance teachers' training, teachers' evaluation and monitoring, teachers' accountability and professional development to enhance quality education in Kenya?
I was actually a district officer. I was a district commissioner. So he has a fairly feel of the different parts of this country, including the most rural and marginalized areas. I don't want to repeat what Honorable Kosing said. You haven't worked in public service, and you haven't worked in education other than getting educated. My serious concern, really very serious concern, is there are too many moving things in education. And the first thing which I want to take up with you is NACONEC. The idea of coming up with NACONEC from the beginning is to allow access to education for the nomadic children, the pastoralists, the most marginalized people in this country. Very few years, NACONEC has been turned into some sort of paltry for all disadvantaged enclaves in Kenya, including Nairobi, all that. Going forward, if the House approves your nomination, in terms of bringing back NACONEC online, to address the mandate for which it was found place. Secondly, it is this issue of TVET. I think honorable colleagues have touched on, but I want to repeat. The idea of having TVET institution is, once we lost the middle level colleges, I think in the late 80s and 90s, then TVET is found that this is a serious gap in our education, particularly on the side of technical skills. With the current funding model, a lot of those youngsters are likely to drop out of those institutions. What would be your plan or a strategy to make sure that those learners remain in those institutions until they qualify? Thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Nominee, answer those three.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'll start with the Honorable Mbui's question on the low capitation. The low capitation is an issue that is tied to the low funding in the government. As I said earlier, the government was supposed to be funding 80%, but the capitation that has been going to schools is far much less than that 80%, and that is a problem of not having enough funds coming from Treasury. And of course, there is a bigger problem in that the economy is not able to meet those obligations. And the issue relating to the primary, the schools not being free, education not being free, because of these other additions that actually sometimes lead to even the figures being higher than the school fees that is supposed to be paid, and then using that to send the children home. That is a violation of actually the policy that exists, and it boils down to the issue that I had raised earlier of the difficulty in ensuring that those who flout these laws are punished. And the solution to that is to ensure that we are able to come up with a fund that will totally cover the costs of education in the country, so that the children just go to school and the government pays for everything, so that the question of sending them home, retaining certificates do not arise. And that's what I was saying earlier, that perhaps it is time we have a conversation as to what is the actual amount of money in this country is everybody spending on education, and what is the amount of money in this country that we need yearly to cover for all the children, so that it is completely free. If that audit was done, on one hand, the amount of money from various units, because you go to CDF, you'll find a bursary, you go to counties, there's a bursary, you go to the private sector, there's a bursary, there are scholarships that come from other institutions that cover certain parts, but nobody has done an audit to find out for sure how much, and then there's capitation, etc. How much is it that is going to this particular sector called education? Because it then happens that because there is no coordination, there is duplicity. Some people get more. Some people get more than 3, 4 amounts coming from the various institutions. Others get nothing. So if we did on the one hand that particular audit, and then on the other one we find out for sure how much do we need per child from class 1 all the way to university. If we find then that there is a gap, then we come up and find out how do we fill that gap. I wouldn't say what it is, because once you do it, you might find that we actually have more money than we need, in which case we'll be okay. But if we find that there is less money, then what do we do? Do we come up with an education bond, for example, to cover that part so that every child goes to school for that period? So it is time we need to have that conversation, including with the private sector, because the private sector, when they give scholarships, they are giving to these children. So if we come together as a country, we will be able to solve that problem. The challenge that we have now is everybody operates in isolation. Everybody is doing their things in isolation. You can't read what is happening. One arm, you can't see what is happening on the other side. But if we were open, transparent, and then we say this is what we have, this is the problem we have, then we'll be able to solve it. So that is the way I would go into it, to solve this problem once and for all. Indeed, on the question of uniforms, for example, if it was taken up by government, for example, we have NYS, they can do the uniforms, we can work with other textile companies, then these ones do the uniforms and we distribute them to the children. So we would have solved that problem of uniforms. But we have to have that conversation to see what is the best way that that can be resolved. Honorable Mule, teachers training. We now have the new CBC system, and teachers have been undergoing a lot of training and retooling. For instance, next year we don't have Form 1s. What is going to happen to the teachers who have been teaching Form 1? So we need to address that question. The teachers who are teaching Year 9, are they well equipped to do that teaching? In fact, when I was talking to TSC yesterday or the day before, they told me there has not been a rationalization of teachers. There are situations where, for example, in primary school as we speak, they have an excess of 18,000 teachers. And this excess of 18,000 teachers came about by the issue relating to delocalization, the removal of that policy of delocalization. And then on the other hand, we have 400,000 teachers who are trained and they are not employed. On the other hand, we have a shortfall of 106 teachers, 106,000 teachers that we need to bring in for us to be able to do the CBC up to the level where we are. So we have a problem of policies that operate in cross purposes. So there is room for us to sit down and rationalize and say, are these the type of teachers we need for this course? If I can go further, I was talking to the university team, and they said in this year, 173 students have applied to go to the university. 53,000 of those are teachers. They are going for education. So we have We already have 400,000. We have 53,000 applying to come in. We then have universities that are not able to meet their obligations, but they are offering these courses. Are they offering the right courses? So it is a question of us sitting down and looking at the whole sector to try and understand what is really ailing us vis-a-vis what we are offering. Because you cannot be offering courses where you have 400,000 people already out, you are bringing in 53,000 just because we employed 58,000 the other day. So everybody thinks when I come out, I'm going to get a job. In 4 years, we'll be having 600,000 teachers or 700,000 teachers. But on the other hand, we have 18,000 that are not told properly to deal with the system that we have. And all this comes to us, and that duplicity works backwards to raising the cost of education in this country. So what we need to do is frank, be forthright, and say, let us look at this problem in its entirety and look at it so that we can get a solution. And if every day when you wake up making a decision in the education sector under Article 129, and you say you are doing this for the benefit of the children, you will make the right decision. You would make the right decision, and this problem would be resolved. Going to Russell's question on not having worked in the public sector, I'm very passionate about the public sector. As I sit here, I have educated over 600 children. They've gone to various universities and various schools. I come from a humble background. I have seen what education can do. And I know when you disadvantage a child, you've taken away their life. Because without education is the only thing that can help children in this country move to where they are supposed to be. So we must, as we wake up, if you are in the sector, ask yourself, this decision I'm making, is it for the benefit and the interest of the child? If you find that the answer is no, and you're in the public sector, then you're in the wrong place. You must answer that question correctly. So in terms of NACONEC, it is true, it was a program that was supposed to deal with the ASAL areas. But the disadvantage in, for example, Northeastern is not different from the disadvantage from a child who lives in the slums in Mathare. They are both Kenyan children. So if we are able to get enough resources to cover for the children in Northeastern, we should be doing it for those other informal sectors. The question should be, how do we raise the funds so that we move from covering 2.6 million children to 10 million children? Because they are all children of this country. So what we need to be working on is not reducing what NACONEC is doing, but expanding it. Is not reducing what the school feeding program is doing, but expanding it. Because with that expansion, you know, somebody who is hungry in Northeastern is the same hunger that somebody suffers in another place. So we just need to accept that we are all Kenyans, and we need to resolve the problems that we have in the best way possible. So if I was to become nominee, I would expand NACONEC. I would not reduce it. I would look for resources to ensure that in Northeastern, even the children who are following their parents, create caravan schools so that they go together with their parents and they are being followed to study. So that, I mean, it is not rocket science. Those children are our children who are in this country. Yeah? And we cannot have a country where you do not enjoy the benefits of the country.
Shuria.
Oh, he has not answered the question on TVET.
On TVET.
TVET.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for reminding me.
Concise and precise.
The TVET is a very important program. The TVETs are being constructed in all the 290 constituencies. We have done, or they have done 252. I think there are 52 remaining. And what I would do for TVET is create the TVET colleges in the country and isolate a few to become centers of excellence. Because what is happening is, like, we are in Kenya and we have countries like Sudan, Congo, and they are not as advanced in the TVET using the technical studies as we are. So that we can have students coming from other countries to study in our colleges here in order to raise the funds. With respect to the dropout is because of the funding. So as a government or as a country, we need to start thinking what other revenue, self-revenue collection, raising revenue methods can we come up with so that we can be able to sustain ourselves. And that is part of it. The other thing that needs to be done is we have major projects that take place in the country. We need to develop a mechanism where, if we are going to undertake, say, the expressway project, we identify how many trades, how many disciplines are in that project, so that we inbuild a component in the project where the students from these TVET colleges would work in that particular project, both as learning, because the TVET you do 50% in class and 50% with the industries, and work with the industry so that we do not lose that momentum. So we need to keep going and expanding.
Thank you. Shuria? Kama huna swali ni sawa sawa.
Niko na swali, Bwana Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Bwana nominee, there's a lot of uproar in the education sector, and I was glad when you picked the issue of the finance bill. I'm not sure if you're aware of the High Court judgment on the constitutional petition 371 of 2021, Nelson Harvey versus Cabinet Secretary for Education, and 7 others on the CBC. What's your take on the judgment?
I haven't had a chance to look at the judgment. Maybe when I get a chance to look at it, then I'll get back to you. I actually not looked at it. Thank you.
Mishi?
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chairman. Honorable Chairman, there's been a tendency whereby some TSC teachers, when they are posted to ASAL areas, they refuse to go on the basis of insecurity. This has really disadvantaged the learners from those areas to an extent that some of them drop some subject because they don't have teachers. What policies are you going to put in place to ensure that these students or learners from ASAL areas are not disadvantaged in terms of education? My second question, there have been recent research, and it has been noted that there's quite a number of girls dropping from school due to early pregnancies. What measures are you going to put in place to ensure that these girls are given a second chance to learn and they're not expelled from school until they're ready to give birth? And after giving birth and having maternity, they can be reinstated back to the school so that they finish their education. I thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Mukami? Amisi? Caleb?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to know, the nominee, what your views on the continuous delay of the disbursement of HELB loan. It has become a thorn in the flesh. Most university students are on the streets on the same, and also the arbitrary increase in the university fees that is now making education look like a privilege rather than it's supposed to be for everyone. Then lastly, Speaker, the late Dr. Griffin, the former founder of Starehe Boys Center, where I schooled, once told us that if you are given a glass or a coffee cup, you wash it as if there's no any other coffee cup that has been washed before. And the nominee, you are going to a very sensitive ministry. We've heard all these stories now and before on how you expect to do. Education, to me, is like an economic necessity to this country. It's a major pillar of any nation. And Honorable Speaker, from even the elementary to secondary to the university, if you look at the Asian countries, the development parts of Singapore, South Korea, Japan, it mostly was on education. they streamlined the education sector. When you report to office upon approval, if in case you are approved, what is this radical measures you are going to introduce in that ministry? What is this miracle? How are you going to perform the miracle, and what are the paraphernalias of this miracle? Because we need to see, we've been hearing these stories. So what is this that we are going to see in the Ministry of Education for once, when maybe in 100 days of your service, that ministry?
Answer those, Migos.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. To Honorable Mish's question on the northeastern teachers refusing to go because of insecurity, this has been a teething and thorny problem for TSC, and the only way this can be done is if we work together with the Ministry of Interior to come up with the parameters and strategies to ensure that the teachers are secured. And one of those would be perhaps coming up with low-cost boarding schools so that the student can be studying in one place that can be easily secured. On the question of girls' pregnancy, the ministry's policy is that they are not supposed to be sent away, and they are supposed to be given a chance to come back and continue with their studies. We don't have a policy where if they become pregnant, then that's the end of their life. That changed. It was there before, but it has since changed. To Honorable Mrs. question on the continuous delay on HELB loans, this again is a problem of the resources being released on time, and the issue relating to the collections of those who have already gone before. I understand that there is a study that is going on to find out whether HELP can come up with a bond to ensure that they have enough resources to cover the students so that we avoid this problem. On the issue of the increase on fees, I understand the fees has not increased for the programs. What has happened is that before, the program's cost was not being indicated. Now with the new funding model, the program amount is being indicated, and the parents are thinking the fees has been increased from what was being given as capitation. So the fees, as I understand, are not increased, and what would happen is under the new funding model, the student is still getting funded through the scholarship and help as to ensure that they are not paying more than they were supposed to be paying before. On the question of what I would do...
Excuse me, Mr. Nominee. You know, when you said that the money being indicated as school fees is the actual cost as costed by the ministry. But when a parent in the village receives a school fees, admission letter that has 350,000, 450,000, can you imagine the panic you're causing across the country? It is careless and not strategic. This is how you build anger in the country. So the letter should just have the exact cost per household cost, not the full amount, because the rest is being covered by the Higher Education Fund and HELP. So I hope you're going to change that if you're confirmed.
Thank you, Madam.
Related. Sorry to interrupt. Maybe Mr. Migos, you could also tell us in relation to that university funding, what would be your view on the funding using public resources of students who are in private universities? Well, across the country, we have universities and campuses that are almost closing down because they don't have students being sent to them by COUPS, or the Kenya Colleges and Universities Placement Services.
Speaker, allow me briefly. On the same issue on the university funding model, the students, you'll have to have a criteria on determining who's the most vulnerable or poor. And what we have seen is that you have a category of children of single parents and a category of children who are orphans. And you give different, what measures will be put in place to ensure that you actually get the most vulnerable in the community and not disadvantage them in the new university funding model?
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Finish the other round. Then
Yes, I was going to the issue of the miracle that I would do in 100 days. There is no miracle that I'm going to perform. That there is a problem in the sector, and is a problem that needs to be faced head on. So there'll be discussions on what do we do to solve those problems, and I'll not be able to do it alone. But I will offer leadership and hold discussions and consultations with each and everybody who is involved in the sector. For example, with respect to not having enough classes so that the children can be in school, the year 9 children can be in school in January, is an immediate problem. So that's a problem that takes priority that we need to look at and solve. So I can't sit here and say I have a miracle solution to all the problems that are there, but what I can do is say I'm ready and willing and able to offer leadership to get the kind of solutions that are required in the sector.
Order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I didn't say miracle in literal terms. Honorable Speaker, when you stand to be a president of Kenya, you know what ails the country. You tell the people, this is a problem of this nation. This is what I want to solve. That's what I need to hear from the nominee. This is a problem of the Ministry of Education. This is how I intended to solve. You can't say, I will get there and consult. What are you consulting on? On what?
Migos,
yes.
Waswahili wanasema kila shetani na mbuyu wake.
Thank you, Honorable. What I can say is the challenge, as I said earlier, is a question of funding. So when I get to office, if you sit fit to approve my nomination, I see a solution in this way. In the monies that we are giving to the education sector, which is 27% of the budget, is this fund being used for the purpose for which it was meant? The UNESCO recommendation is that any country should spend not more than 20% of its budget in education. So we are spending 27. We are already above by 7%. It is not going to be possible to get probably more funding from the central government. So the solution must be
by Emasi and somebody else. Duplex applications of public resources.
Yes.
Take the issue of bursaries. The MCA is giving bursary. The Member of Parliament is giving bursary. The Women Rep is giving bursary. The Governor is giving bursary. Your ministry is giving bursary. Banks are giving scholarships, and many other organizations. Apart from the banks, all the others are drawing money from the same source. And sometimes you find fraudulent activities where one child gets a bursary from each of those giving bursaries. How are you going to reform the bursary scheme that will largely contribute in saving probably even 10 billion shillings?
Yes, Chair. Chair. We also have TVET and also the technical schools doing the same thing.
Yes, I do. So as I had indicated earlier, because we've not done an audit of how much money is being used for this particular sector, that is the first thing I would commission, an audit to find out how much money is out here for the...
And you have the current dismantle of these cartels?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. You are asked by Jeanette.
Yes, I'm going.
You know what you are walking into.
Yes, I understand that. There are cartels and other people, but we come at this time, at a critical time when there is a crisis. Using this crisis, it is very possible to dismantle the cartels because with the support, the political support, the parliamentary support, and the support from the public, if we say today that we know you've been doing the wrong thing, we will report you. Somebody would think twice before they continue with what they are doing. So I would use this crisis to dismantle the cartels that exist there. But on the issue of private universities that Mheshimiwa Ichung'wa asked, what the students who are going to private universities are getting is the loan facet, not the scholarship. So, and this is born out of the contention that the parents have chosen to take their children to private universities. They should be able to fund that. So they are getting the loan portion of the funding, not the scholarship portion.
That is under the new funding model.
Yes, that is under the new funding model.
There are students who are ongoing under the old DUC system.
Yes, the ongoing students under the DUC system are still getting the capitation. And speaking as an advocate, I think once you give somebody a right, if you start taking it in the middle, it becomes a bit bad. So I'm thinking that maybe...
My question was, what's your opinion on funding, using public resources to fund students in private universities? Or rather, even start from placement.
Yes.
Why do we have to place students in private universities where we have not filled up all the vacancies we have in public universities built on public resources, or reeling in huge debt because they don't have adequate resources since they don't have students? If approved, would you push COOPs to send more students to private or to public universities, irrespective of whether it's just because even the loan element is public resources?
Yes. What I think can be done is to review the policy that is in place. Find out how did that policy come to be, because it's the ongoing. The one for the new funding model has changed, but the previous one on capitation was a policy that was in place and was going on. So, and then we can do up the math and find out if it's just maybe 2 years that are remaining or 3. But it's not something that I can speak to at the moment. It is something that perhaps that I need to do more research on in order to be able to come to an informed decision.
Yes.
On Madam Lesuda's question on how do we determine who is the most vulnerable, the tool that is used is called the means testing instrument that has 8 parameters. We think that those parameters are not comprehensive enough because it does not identify and they are not linked sufficiently to determine what the incomes of those parents are. So what we think is that it needs to be expanded and linked, because what has happened is you would find the rich not filling the proper figures and the poor, because sometimes of lack of knowledge, they do not put in the right information. So we need to come up with a tool akin to the psychometric test, where you can put so many answers, but at the end, you get the correct result.
Because I'll be more comfortable if you say, if confirmed, I will come up with a tool.
If confirmed. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry. If confirmed.
Thank you, Chairman.
Because you are going to give policy direction to the ministry.
Yes, if confirmed.
Yes, so when, okay, yes.
Thank you, Chairman. But I will not talk again, but I wanted to just say to the nominee, if you get this opportunity to serve Kenyans in that docket, because I've listened to you carefully and you keep talking about money. All your solutions seem to be around having a budget. I want to assure you that as a parliament, we are just about to pass a very rationalized budget, where budget cuts are across the whole, all the ministries. So that's all I wanted to say.
Yes, Migosi, I think we'll end there. There are some Kenyans sending in messages. Many you have answered. One says ensure TVET students get their certificates from their colleges within a month of graduating. The domicile of JSS we have dealt with. Another asks where will senior secondary school be domiciled? We have dealt with. Workers with disabilities are forced to renew exemption certificates every 5 years when their status does not change. I think that is valid. Another one has said, what are you going to do about mushrooming boarding schools, especially in Kisii, that have no facilities? Another one is asking, what is going to be the fate of P1 teachers after the transition? Last, another one asks, what will you do about the imposition of extravagant uniform expenditure on students by schools? Buy a long-sleeved sweater, a short-sleeved sweater, 2 pairs of shoes, 2 pairs of trousers, so many things when in many family setups, children use one pair of clothes until they're exhausted because of lack of money. Now going to school, uniform is costing more than the fees.
And you have to buy from that school.
And then you are obligated to buy from a designated retailer. Those are the cartels we are telling you about. What will you do about that?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the rationalized budget, I agree that it's going to affect a lot of operations, so we will have to look inside and see where to cut inside the operations in areas where maybe it's not a priority so that we can attend to the most important aspects in the ministry. Workers forced to renew every 5 years their certificates, but I think is a question that needs to be taken up with the organization that deals with this, the relevant ministry, so that we can work together and maybe have that particular requirement removed because the person position does not change. The mushrooming boarding schools, this is a question of the registration requirements. It means there is a weakness there. We'll need to look at the quality assurance to ensure that the registration of the boarding schools meet the requirements of the ministry. P1 teachers, they'll have to be retooled and absorbed into the new program so that they do not, because they are permanent and pensionable.
Let's end there. Let me now ask you a few questions. Do you hold any leadership in any political party?
No, Chairman.
Have you ever been adversely mentioned in any integrity-related report?
No, Chairman.
We received a memorandum. Unfortunately, I'm told it was not sent to you. You can respond to it and send an email to the Secretariat from one David Ogega Ochwangi.
Yes, they actually
you got it?
I got it and I filed a response.
You've responded?
Yes.
Okay.
I've sent it so you could.
The clerk thought you had not received it. You've responded to it?
I rely on that response, yes.
Is it factual?
The response? No, it's not factual. I'm not the one who signed those documents. Mm-hmm. And I have documents from the committee confirming that position.
What is your net worth in terms of personal wealth?
I'm worth 790 million.
790 million?
Yes.
Made up in...
It's made up of largely land, and I've got tea, I've got trees, and vehicles, farm equipment, and of course the income from the law firm.
Okay. Thank you, Migos. We have also checked your documents submitted to the Secretariat and compared with what you had sent earlier, and we find them to be in order. You are consequently held. You are released to go.
I want to thank you, Chairman, for this opportunity and honorable members. I want to also thank the many Kenyans who sent me messages of goodwill. Thank you, and I hope I'll find favor with yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Yes. Peter Trop. Do you want to pass here? Yes. Do you need any health break? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Yes.
Decide whether you prefer scented or unscented detergents. Some people enjoy the fresh fragrance left on their clothes after washing, while others prefer a fragrance-free option.
Coffee, colorful day, wonderful scent.
Can we understand an unspoken language? Itaweza habari ya asubuhi. Can it be a way to savor each moment? Sisi tunajua it can start lifelong stories. Be the center of celebrations and so much more. The more the milk, the better the chai kweli in a Brookside Dairy Best.
High-quality diapers often feature multiple layers, a moisture-wicking top layer, and a core designed to lock in moisture.
New Soft Care Space Series is rooted from